Today, we're going to discuss how you can never experience another menstrual cramp again. If you're female and deal with cramps, you'll be so glad you watched this entire video. I'm going to provide not just a solution, but one that targets the root cause, so you can hopefully prevent them from ever returning and avoid side effects from treatment. So, what is a menstrual cramp? It's a very painful period. There are two main types of cramps. First, there is the primary type, which is idiopathic, meaning the cause is unknown. Then, there is the secondary type, which usually stems from an underlying issue causing the cramp, such as a fibroid, an ovarian cyst, or endometriosis, which is extra tissue growing outside the uterus and around different organs in your lower abdomen. The problem with severe menstrual cramps is that many women rely on NSAIDs for pain, birth control pills, or Depot, which is a synthetic version of progesterone. All of these have side effects. Meanwhile, the actual root cause of menstrual cramps is never even mentioned. And I know why that is. It's simply because it isn't part of the medical consensus. Consensus is a group agreement, which is often biased and influences the very groups that form it. The issue is that when you try to research menstrual cramps on Google or even ChatGPT, you won't find this information. I'm going to explain how I discovered it using various clues, but I found it very entertaining to look under the alternative medicine section on Wikipedia. Here is what it said. There is insufficient evidence to recommend the use of many herbal and dietary supplements for treating dysmenorrhea, including melatonin, vitamin E, fennel, dill, chamomile, cinnamon, damask rose, rhubarb, guava, and uzara. A 2016 review found that evidence of safety is insufficient for most dietary supplements. So, in other words, they claim there is no safety evidence for these natural options. But what about the safety of these drugs? If you compare and contrast drugs with alternative care, there is a massive difference. I just found it fascinating that they included that statement because, obviously, they are trying to discourage you from seeking an alternative. They went on to say, there is some evidence for the use of fenugreek. A 2019 study found that herbal treatments using valerian and a few others may be safe and effective in the treatment of dysmenorrhea. One review found thiamine vitamin B1 and vitamin E to be likely effective. I want to touch on that briefly because, yes, there was one quite large, randomized, controlled study involving over 500 young girls in India, and they found they achieved dramatic relief. However, at the very end of the study, it says, well, we don't know if this works with other cultures. Maybe it just works with people in India. I found that fascinating. They did take 100 milligrams of B1 for 1 to 3 months and got great results. There was also another study showing that vitamin E helps reduce cramps. We'll discuss the mechanism of that in just a moment. It was found that the effects of fish oil and B12 to be unknown. Reviews have found promising evidence for Chinese herbal medicine for primary dysmenorrhea. So let's walk through a few clues to uncover this root cause. Interestingly, basically all the clues were actually in Wikipedia. The first clue I gathered from Wikipedia is that painful cramps stem from pain chemicals called prostaglandins. What causes these? They don't just appear for no reason. If you don't know what triggers them, you're just going to take an NSAID to reduce the pain. Number 2, vasopressin is something else that is elevated when you have a menstrual cramp. This substance causes contractions and decreased blood flow, creating a constriction situation. If you don't understand the cause of this, you just end up taking medication to numb the pain until the next month. The third clue involves high parathyroid hormone. There is a condition called hyperparathyroidism, and some of its symptoms include smooth muscle cramps, tetany, which is muscle twitching, and spasms. This is interesting because parathyroid hormone makes the tissue hypersensitive to contractions. There are a couple of different things happening. First, the parathyroid hormone's job is to mobilize and recruit calcium from the bone, taking calcium from the bone to put into the blood, because calcium levels must always remain at a certain level. When it does this, compared to obtaining calcium from your diet, the transition isn't smooth, it's erratic, and can create the cramps we just mentioned. But the point is, when you have high parathyroid hormone during your menstrual cycle, you may be more likely to experience a cramp than if you didn't. This is just another clue. I'll return to this in a moment. Another factor involved in this painful cramp is much higher inflammation because of this one small thing right here. I won't get into the complexity, but you just need to know it's NFKB. It's in the uterus, leading to more inflammation. The next clue concerns black women compared to white women. There is a 33% higher likelihood of experiencing severe cramps and a 3 to 9 times increased risk of developing fibroids. So that's just a little clue. We'll come back to that. Here is the last clue. Menstrual cramps are sometimes treated with calcium channel blockers. We are talking about something that causes contraction. Anytime you have a muscle contraction, it means it is caused by too much calcium. A calcium channel blocker is something used for blood pressure to lower it and reduce contraction. Well, what are we talking about with a painful menstrual cramp? We are talking about too much calcium in there. All right, have I given you enough clues as to what the root cause is? It is a severe vitamin D3 deficiency, low vitamin D3. Now, how does this relate to all the things I just told you? Well, vitamin D downgrades prostaglandins. Vitamin D also suppresses and reduces vasopressin. It counters this contraction, vasodilates, and opens up blood flow. Let's move to the next one. What does vitamin D do to the parathyroid hormone? Oh my gosh, it majorly controls it by bringing it down. Because when you take vitamin D, you absorb calcium from the gut, and there is no need for your body to elevate parathyroid hormone to mobilize calcium from the bones. So when you have high parathyroid hormone, all that means is you don't have enough vitamin D, because the parathyroid hormone is a surrogate for vitamin D. When you have enough vitamin D, you don't need this going high, and you have less contraction of the smooth muscle because now we have a normal calcium level in the blood. And what's really interesting as a side note, some people use the remedy calcium gluconate for their menstrual cramps. This is because when you take calcium, you automatically reduce this high parathyroid hormone, and then that massive spasm, that tetany, that cramp goes away, giving you a lot of relief. But you're going to be much better off going with this solution, which hits at the root cause. Now, is there any relationship between vitamin D and high inflammation? And also this thing right here, NFKB? Oh my goodness, yes. Vitamin D turns this off. It is one of the most potent anti-inflammatories, so it's going to reduce inflammation. All right, what about this one? What is the relationship between vitamin D and black women? Well, melanin in the skin acts as a natural sunscreen to block UV radiation, and that is one of the barriers for vitamin D. The darker the skin, the more sun you need to penetrate through that barrier so you can get enough vitamin D. This also explains the fibroids, because a fibroid is a severe vitamin D deficiency, just like endometriosis and just like a cyst on the ovary. There is some really interesting data showing that if you are trying to shrink a benign tumor, you need to get your vitamin D blood levels above 90 nanograms per milliliter, which a lot of people don't know about. They keep their blood levels between 20 and 30, or even 40. It's just not going to be in the range. Not to mention, if your estrogen is too high or too low, that is going to affect your vitamin D levels. You need enough proper estrogen to be able to activate vitamin D and also allow the vitamin D to penetrate deep into the cells. So there is definitely this huge connection between vitamin D, estrogen, and progesterone. And now, what about this calcium channel blocker? Well, a natural calcium channel blocker is magnesium. Magnesium causes the opposite of contraction. It causes relaxation. Anytime you have a cramp, it means you need more magnesium. Without vitamin D, magnesium won't work. And without magnesium, vitamin D won't work. So you need both of these. But the point is that magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. Also, if we're talking about blood pressure, vitamin D is one of the most potent things to lower blood pressure. So part of the solution I'm going to recommend is vitamin D with magnesium, but not with additional calcium, because we already have too much contraction. Now, I'm going to get into 13 scientifically proven tips to help you never have a cramp again. I'm really excited to bring you a new children's book that we just created called Lucy, Nora, and Freeman on the Hunt for Real Food. Both Lucy and Nora are my two grandkids, and I wanted to create something for them to teach them about the basics of real food. This children's book differentiates real food from junk food in a very unique way. In this book, I go through a whole story where Lucy is teaching Nora and Freeman about the difference between junk food and real food. What's really interesting about this book is this is the second version of it. For the first version, I sat down with Lucy to read it to her to surprise her. I was thinking that she would be really excited about it, but halfway through it, she stopped me and said, "Grandpa, there's too many words in this book. I'm like, okay, back to square one. So I went back. I simplified it a little bit more. I took out some of the complexities and I made it really, really simple so a 6-year-old can easily comprehend it and learn from this. I also talk about what to eat at a restaurant and give a couple of recipes that a parent can actually do with their kids to make some very healthy desserts. We have shortbread cookies, vanilla keto sponge cake, keto fluffy pancakes, and yogurt popsicles. So if you have small kids or grandkids, this is a great book to help teach them the basics of what real food is. So that way you don't have to wait until they're a teenager and try to make some changes. It's best if you make the changes early on so they have this knowledge and they themselves can determine what is healthy food versus junk food. All right, let's go through the list right now. Number one, you want to start taking more vitamin D3. In the research involving taking vitamin D3 in reducing menstrual cramps, which, by the way, there is quite a bit of research. It's just not in Wikipedia. It's somewhere else. I'm going to put those links down below because you need to know about it. There are two types of vitamin D. One type for your bone and calcium, and the other type for all the other tissues, including the immune system, the uterus, the muscles, etc. That system of vitamin D is needed daily. You should be taking vitamin D daily or getting sun daily. The amount you should take as a maintenance daily is roughly between 6,000 to 10,000 IUs every single day. That's like 20 minutes in the sun. Because there are so many barriers to getting vitamin D, not being outside, not having sun exposure, being overweight. Maybe your skin's a little bit darker, in which case you need even more vitamin D. Or maybe you have insulin resistance, or you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, which really restricts your ability to absorb vitamin D. There are many barriers on top of even genetic barriers as well. But the point is that one of the studies used a one-shot 300,000 IUs of vitamin D3 just once a month. The other study used 50,000 IUs every week. And the other interesting thing about the research papers that I was reading, they only brought the vitamin D levels up to like 30 nanograms per milliliter. Now, from my viewpoint, that's still too low. What they should have done is added some cofactors to allow them to work better, like vitamin K2, especially magnesium, and maybe even zinc. I just want to mention that because there are really no studies out there doing what I just told you. They are taking either way too much or way too infrequent amounts of vitamin D that you would need to create a positive change. So this is what I'm going to recommend. Vitamin D3, 20,000 IUs. At least that. Every day with magnesium. I would take magnesium glycinate because that's the best absorbable form of magnesium. You absorb like 80% versus magnesium oxide, which you're only absorbing like 3% of, and that's not going to be very effective. I would take these two every single day so it can build up in the tissues. That way, when you go right into your period, you have the maximum vitamin D in the tissues to prevent those prostaglandins from going up, to keep your vasopressin down, to keep your parathyroid hormone down, and to keep the inflammation down. Now, on top of that, I highly recommend you go on a low-carb diet, a healthy version of the ketogenic diet. Why? So that way, we don't have to deal with this other barrier to absorbing vitamin D and magnesium, which is insulin resistance. If you can improve insulin sensitivity, you will also improve your absorption of vitamin D3. When you have insulin resistance, you have high insulin, and vitamin D is not going to be going in or being absorbed near as well. I mean, just take a look at a diabetic. They are not really absorbing near as much vitamin D as they need. Parallel with this low-carb approach, you want to do intermittent fasting. So you don't want to be eating 6 meals a day, 3 meals with 2 snacks. You want to maybe do 2 meals or even 1 meal, because the less frequent you eat, the faster you're going to improve this insulin sensitivity and thus increase your vitamin D absorption. Number 5, there is some fascinating data on cod liver oil and RCT's randomized controlled studies showing it works as well as ibuprofen without the side effects from menstrual cramps. And it has been used for a very long time, even in the medical profession, for all sorts of health problems in the early part of the century. Okay, number 6, vitamin E. You can get vitamin E from eating leafy greens, salads, and certain nuts and seeds. If you take it as a supplement, I would recommend taking the type of vitamin E called tocotrienols, not the tocopherols, because the tocotrienols just work a lot better. And then number 7, we talked about B1 in that trial. If you consume nutritional yeast on your salad, that will give you not only enough B1 that can help the nerve sensitivity issue and the actual pain, but also can give you B6 and the other B vitamins that can actually contribute to improvement in that area. The best source for replacing the iron is red meat, not from a pill. The other thing, number 9, is zinc. Zinc is also necessary to help you absorb vitamin D3 as well as reduce pain from menstrual cycle issues, and you can get the zinc from the red meat. It's a really good source of zinc, iron, and some of the B vitamins. Number 10, regular exercise has been shown to reduce this risk of menstrual cramps. And then number 11 is fenugreek. There was a randomized controlled trial that I saw that compared fenugreek, a natural thing, to NSAIDs, but without the side effects. So that's another remedy you can look at. Number 12, just using a heating pad. I would use one of those bladders with water and heat it up and hold it over your lower pelvis right where the uterus is, because this therapy also was comparable to NSAIDs without the side effect. I mean, that's an awesome therapy. And 13, ginger was also comparable to NSAIDs in a randomized controlled study. Now that you understand a lot more about this root cause of crampy, painful periods and how to deal with it, the next most important video for you to watch is on the details of vitamin D3 and magnesium. So I put that video up right here. Check it out right now.